Emma walked into the restaurant with a deep breath, her heart pounding quietly in her chest. She wore the same black and white uniform as the others, but everything still felt new and strange to her. It was her first day as a waitress in the big city, and though she had waited tables before, this place was different. It was fancy crystal glasses, silver forks, white tablecloths, and people who smelled like expensive perfume. She smiled politely at everyone, trying not to let her hands shake as she carried a tray with water. Her manager, a tall man named Mr. Daniels, showed her where to stand and how to greet the guests. "Be quiet, be quick, be invisible," he said with a smirk. Emma nodded without a word. Her first table was a group of well-dressed people, 3 women and 2 men, all wearing shiny clothes and laughing too loudly. They didn't look at Emma when she approached, just waved their hands like she was furniture. "Water," one of the women said, without even glancing up. Emma nodded and brought it quickly, careful not to spill. But when she turned to leave, she heard them whisper behind her. "Look at her," one said. "She looks like she walked out of a barn. She hasn't even said a word," said another. "Maybe she doesn't speak." Then they laughed, not kindly, but like a joke that only they found funny. Emma heard it all, but she kept her face calm. She didn't let them see the sting in her heart. She had come to the city for a fresh start. She left behind a small town, a broken dream, and a memory she tried to forget. No one here knew she used to play piano, or that she had once been accepted into a music academy. But life had changed too quickly. Her father passed away. Her mother fell ill, and Emma had to give up school to work full-time. She found this restaurant job through a friend, and she took it without hesitation. It wasn't what she wanted, but it helped pay the bills. Still, it hurt to be treated like she didn't matter. As the night went on, Emma continued serving food, clearing dishes and wiping tables. She didn't complain, didn't cry, didn't even frown. But deep inside, the words stuck to her like wet paint words, like barn girl and silent statue. That's what they had called her, and maybe that's how they saw her when the shift ended. She changed clothes in the small locker room and walked home. It was late, and the streets were quiet. Her small apartment was just 2 rooms and a window that didn't close properly, but it was hers. She dropped her bag on the floor and walked to the corner of the room. There stood an old digital keyboard, dusty and unused. She touched the keys gently, then sat down and closed her eyes. Her fingers began to play slowly, a sad melody that she had written years ago. Each note held a piece of her story: grief, silence, anger, and dreams. The music filled the small room, echoing softly like a forgotten voice. She played for herself, not for anyone else. Not for the people at the restaurant, not for the ones who laughed, but for the girl who still lived inside Hertha, girl who once believed music could change her life. The next morning, she woke up early and returned to the restaurant. She put on her uniform and tied her hair back, ready for another day. As she passed the lounge area, she stopped and stared at the old grand piano in the corner of the dining hall. It hadn't been played in weeks, maybe months. She wondered if the keys were still in tune. She wondered if anyone would care to listen. One of the cooks noticed her looking and chuckled. "That thing? It's just for show," he said. "No one plays it anymore." Emma smiled faintly and walked on. But a tiny thought bloomed in her heart. What if she could play it? Just once. Just to remind herself she still could. That thought stayed with her through the entire day, even when someone spilled wine on her apron. Even when another guest snapped fingers to get her attention, Emma kept that quiet idea tucked safely in the back of her mind. They could mock her, ignore her, laugh behind her back, but they didn't know her. They didn't know what she had sacrificed, or how many hours she had practiced with bleeding fingers as a child. Emma was more than a waitress, and though she didn't know it yet, soon the world would see it too. But for now, she stayed silent. Her music still locked inside her, waiting, waiting for the right moment to be heard. The restaurant had something most people ignored. In one corner of the lounge behind the wine racks and soft yellow lights stood a grand piano. Its surface was dusty, its keys untouched. It was beautiful, but forgotten. Emma noticed it every day when she walked past it to begin her shift. She would glance at it quickly, then look away, afraid someone might catch her staring too long. She wanted to touch it, to play even just one note, but she was only a waitress, and no one would let her near it. Still, she couldn't help it before each shift. While others were setting tables or chatting in the back, she took a small cloth from her apron and wiped the piano gently. No one asked her to, but she did it anyway. It was her secret routine. One afternoon, the restaurant was busier than usual. A group of rich regulars came in again, the same ones who had laughed at her on her first day. They were loud, full of wine, and full of jokes. They sat at their usual table near the piano, making fun of the servers and talking about their weekend parties. Emma served them water with her usual quiet smile, careful not to react when one of the men winked at her and called her the silent ghost. She turned away, but the comment stayed with her. Later that evening, after the dinner rush had slowed down, someone at the table pointed at the piano. "Hey, remember when people used to play that thing?" One of them laughed. "Yeah," another said. "Some old man used to play classical stuff. Boring as hell." Then the third guy, the loudest one, looked at Emma as she passed by. He grinned and said, "Hey waitress, want to give us a concert? You look like someone who'd know how to play Mary Had a Little Lamb." The whole table burst into laughter. The sound of their mocking laughter filled the room, and a few nearby guests turned to see what was going on. Emma stopped, her tray still in hand. She looked at them, then at the piano. Something inside her snapped, not in anger, but in quiet courage. She placed the tray down on the counter, walked calmly over to the piano, and sat down. The room went silent. A few guests whispered to each other, wondering what was happening. The group of regulars looked surprised, like they hadn't expected her to actually do it. Emma adjusted the piano bench, brushed her fingers lightly over the keys, and closed her eyes. For a second, the whole restaurant held its breath. Then she played. The first note was soft and slow, like a whisper. The next flowed into a gentle melody that grew deeper, richer, more powerful. Her hands moved gracefully, confidently, as if they had been waiting for this moment. The sound filled the room, not just with music, but with emotion. It was beautiful, sad, and full of memories. Each note told a story. Without words, a story of someone who had been ignored, laughed at, and forgotten. Every fork froze midair. Every conversation stopped. The bartenders, the chefs in the kitchen, even the guests at the far tables, all of them turned to look. The regulars at the table sat in complete silence now. The man who mocked her was frozen, his drink untouched. His face slowly shifted from laughter to disbelief. Emma didn't look up. She kept her eyes on the keys, lost in the music. Her heart was full of pain, full of dreams, full of everything she had held in for years. And now, through music, she let it out when she reached the final note. The room was completely still. No one moved, no one spoke. The sound faded, and for a long second, there was only silence. Then one person clapped, softly, then another, and another. Soon the entire room erupted in applause. Loud and honest, people stood up, clapping, whistling, even cheering. Emma stood quietly from the piano bench and nodded once. She didn't smile, didn't bow. She simply walked back to her tray, picked it up, and continued working like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. The people who had laughed now looked down at their plates, ashamed. The guests who never noticed her before now watched her with admiration, and Emma, the silent waitress, had become something more in their eyes. Without saying a word, she had shown them who she really was. And though the music had ended, the memory of it stayed in the air like a soft echo that refused to fade. She had touched something deep inside everyone who heard her, not just with talent, but with truth, and the grand piano in the corner, once forgotten, had just become the heart of the room, thanks to the girl no one thought mattered. At first, everyone thought it was a joke. When Emma sat down at the piano, people expected something simple or maybe even silly. The regulars who had mocked her leaned back in their chairs, ready to laugh again. But then she played the first note. It was soft and slow, but it had feeling. It wasn't just a sound, it was emotion. People turned their heads, surprised. Her fingers moved across the keys like water flowing in a quiet river. Each note connected to the next like a thread, weaving a story within seconds. The mood in the restaurant changed. The air became still, like something magical had entered the room. Guests stopped eating. Waiters froze mid-step. Even the manager peeked out from the kitchen doorway. Emma didn't look up. Her eyes stayed closed, her face calm, but her fingers danced with purpose. She played a song she had written herself, back when she believed music could heal pain, and in that moment, it was healing her too. People who had never noticed her before now couldn't look away. Some covered their mouths in shock. Others leaned forward in their seats, completely silent. One man whispered to his wife, "She's amazing." The same group of regulars that had joked about her now sat frozen. One of the women blinked quickly, clearly holding back tears. The man who had mocked her the most gripped his glass tightly, his proud smile now gone. Emma's music was not just beautiful, it was alive. It told a story without words. A story of someone who had been overlooked, laughed at, and forgotten, but who still held something powerful inside. As she continued playing, her hands moved faster, the notes rising like a storm. It was no longer just soft and sad, became bold, strong, even defiant. She wasn't just performing, she was showing the world her soul. People could feel the emotions through the keys: hope, pain, strength, love. Her music made them remember their own pasts, their dreams, their losses. It was like she was speaking to each of them without saying a single word. The restaurant had never been this quiet during dinner, not even the sound of forks or glasses clinking. Only her piano filling every corner of the room. Then, after 5 minutes that felt like a dream, the music slowly faded. Emma finished the last note, letting it hang in the air like a goodbye. She didn't move right away. Her hands rested gently on the keys, as if saying thank you to the instrument. Then she stood up quietly, turned around, and began walking back to her tray like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. There was silence just for a moment. Then someone clapped. A single clap, slow and full of respect, then another, and another. And suddenly, the whole room stood up. A standing ovation echoed through the restaurant. People clapped louder than ever before. Some even whistled. A few guests wiped tears from their eyes, overcome with emotion. Emma didn't expect it. She paused, her eyes wide in surprise. She had played because she needed to, not for fame or attention, but now she had both. The manager looked shocked, then proud. He had never seen his restaurant like this. He clapped the hardest of them all. One of the women from the mocking table walked over slowly. She didn't say anything, just nodded to Emma with a small, honest smile, then returned to her seat without another word. Emma stood there, unsure what to do. She had never received applause like that before, not even at her old music school. She felt a warmth inside her chest that she hadn't felt in years, like something had come back to life. After the crowd settled, dinner continued, but something was different now. People looked at Emma differently. They smiled at her, nodded, even thanked her as she passed. The grand piano in the corner, once ignored, was now the most important part of the restaurant. and Emma, the quiet, shy waitress, had become the heart of the night. Back in the small break room, Emma sat alone for a moment, trying to understand what had just happened. Her hand still tingled from the keys. Her heart still raced. She looked down at her fingers and whispered to herself, "I still have it." She smiled, not because others had clapped, but because she had found her courage again. And deep inside, she knew this was just the beginning. Emma stood in the break room, her heart still racing from what had just happened. She could still feel the piano keys under her fingers, still hear the sound of the applause ringing in her ears. For a moment, she had forgotten she was just a waitress. For a moment, she had been someone else, someone stronger, someone seen. She didn't know that outside the break room, her name was being whispered at every table. Guests were asking about her. Some were asking the manager, "Who is she? And where did she learn to play like that?" The manager, Mr. Daniels, stood behind the bar watching her from a distance. He had seen many performances over the years, but none like that, and definitely not from one of his own staff after. The restaurant closed. He waited until Emma finished cleaning up. Then he called her into his office. Emma stepped in, nervous. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked quietly. Mr. Daniels shook his head and gave a small smile. "Wrong?" he said. "You just brought the whole restaurant to a stop. People are still talking about it." Emma looked down, unsure what to say. "I just played, sir," she whispered. "You didn't just play," he said firmly. "You performed. You touched people. I haven't seen a crowd that silent in years." She blinked, her eyes wide, not expecting such praise. Then he leaned forward. "I want to offer you something. I'd like you to play here in the evenings, twice a week, just for an hour before the dinner rush. What do you say?" Emma's heart jumped. She wasn't sure if she had heard him right. "You mean play the piano as part of the job?" "Yes," he nodded. "We'll call it Piano Nights with Emma. It might bring in more guests. And honestly, you deserve to be heard." Emma smiled softly, but she hesitated. It had been years since she performed in front of people. And this time, it wouldn't be an accident. It would be real, planned, expected. "I'll think about it," she said gently. "Take your time," Mr. Daniels said. "But I think you already know your answer." That night, when Emma returned home, she couldn't stop thinking about the offer. She stared at her old keyboard, touching the keys with careful fingers. Memories flooded back her first music lesson, her father clapping for her at school recitals, the moment she got accepted into music school, and the day she gave it all up. Now it was like that part of her was returning, slowly, gently, but surely. The next day, Emma walked into the restaurant and told Mr. Daniels, "Yes, I'll do it." He clapped his hands together. "Great. We'll make posters, tell the regulars, and light the piano properly this time." On her first official piano night, the restaurant was half full. Some people came early just to hear her. Emma sat at the piano in a simple dress, hands shaking slightly. But when she started playing, the nerves disappeared. Her music filled the space again, soft and emotional. Guests listened quietly. Some even closed their eyes to feel the notes after her performance. A woman left a note on the piano. "Your music reminded me of my mother. Thank you." Another man asked for her name and told her he hadn't felt this moved in years. Emma returned to her waitressing duties with a different kind of pride. People no longer looked through her. They looked at her with kindness, respect, and even admiration. Even the regulars, who used to laugh at her now, said hello politely. One of them even left a larger tip than usual. She didn't hold a grudge. She simply smiled and kept going. But something had changed in her eyes. There was a spark now, a quiet confidence. She started practicing more at home after her shifts. She cleaned the keys of her old keyboard and played late into the night. Her neighbors could hear the soft music through the walls, but no one complained. Her old piano teacher, who had retired years ago, heard about her performance from a friend, and sent her a message. "I always knew you had it in you. Never let the music go again." Emma smiled as she read the message. Her eyes watered, but her heart felt warm now. Her world had 2 part-serving tables during the day. And becoming someone else in the evening, she wasn't trying to become famous. She just wanted to feel alive again, and with every key she pressed, with every note she played, she did. Emma was no longer just the girl in the background. Now, people came for the food, but stayed for the music. She had found her voice again. Not through speaking, but through sound. Through the one thing that had never truly left her: her music, her story, her truth. Emma's piano nights became something special every week. More people came to the restaurant not just for food, but to hear her music. Some came early to find the best seats near the piano. Others stayed longer, listening quietly as she played. The once ignored instrument in the corner was now the heart of the room, and Emma was the soul behind it. She played with emotion, not to impress, but to share something real. Her music was soft but powerful, gentle but deep. People said her songs made them feel things they hadn't felt in years. One night, after a soft, slow performance, a teenage girl came up to Emma near the counter. Her eyes were red, and she clutched a napkin in her hand. "Your music." The girl said quietly, "It made me feel like someone finally understands me." Emma didn't know what to say at first. She reached out and gently held the girl's hand. "You're not alone," she whispered. Moments like that reminded Emma why she played. It wasn't about attention or applause. It was about connection, sharing something honest and raw with people who needed it. Even the regular guests who once mocked her had changed. They now greeted her kindly. Some even brought friends to hear her music. The man who once called her barn girl now called her Miss Emma and tipped her double. But not everyone was happy. One of the other waitresses, Tanya, had worked there for 2 years before Emma arrived. Tanya used to enjoy being the center of attention. She loved when guests flirted with her or praised her charm. But ever since Emma began playing, all eyes shifted, and Tanya felt forgotten. At first, Tanya said nothing. She smiled in front of others, but grew bitter in silence. She began whispering to new staff that Emma was only getting attention because she wanted to impress the manager. One afternoon in the staff room, Tanya laughed loudly and said, "I don't know why people act like Emma is some star. It's not like she's a real musician. She just plays sad songs." Emma overheard her words. Her chest tightened, but she didn't reply. She simply walked away, but the words stung. Later that week, Emma's schedule changed. She noticed her name had been removed from piano night on Friday. She asked Mr. Daniels about it, and he looked confused. "You asked for the night off, didn't you?" Emma shook her head. "No, I didn't." He checked his notes and frowned. "Tanya said you told her to inform me." Emma realized what had happened, but she stayed calm. "It's okay," she said. "Maybe it was a mistake." That Friday night, the restaurant felt different. The piano sat alone in the corner. Untouched, guests asked about Emma. Some even left early when they found out she wouldn't be playing. Mr. Daniels noticed, and he wasn't pleased. The next morning, he called Emma into his office. "Be honest with me, did you really ask to cancel the performance?" Emma looked at him and shook her head. "No, I didn't." He nodded slowly. "That's what I thought." Later that day, he spoke privately with Tanya after the conversation. Tanya avoided Emma for the rest of the week. Her smile was gone. Replaced by quiet frustration, Emma didn't want revenge. She didn't complain. She believed music was meant to lift people, not tear them down. But she learned something important. Success brings jealousy, and even kindness can be tested. That Sunday, Mr. Daniels made an announcement during the staff meeting. Starting next month, Emma will be our official evening pianist. We'll be updating our website, and we're going to advertise her performances. Some clapped, a few smiled. Tanya said nothing. Emma felt nervous, but also proud. For the first time, her music was becoming something bigger. She still waited tables during the day, but now she had a new tefillah performer, a musician. She wrote a new song that week, one that was softer than usual. It was about forgiveness, about letting go of hurt. She played it quietly one night, and though no words were spoken, the message was clear after she finished. Someone left another note on the piano. It read, "I was angry tonight, but your song helped me breathe again. Thank you." Emma folded the note and placed it in her bag. It was small, but it meant everything. She didn't need to fight with words or prove herself through arguments. Her music did all the speaking for her, and through that music, Emma kept shining quietly, gently, but powerfully. In a world full of noise, she was the calm voice that people came to hear. Again and again, things were going well for Emma. People came to the restaurant not just for dinner, but to hear her play. Her name was on the restaurant's flyers, and her music was now the soul of the place every time she touched the piano keys. The room grew silent. People smiled, some cried, and many left notes of thanks. Emma felt like her life was slowly becoming bright again. But not everyone liked the change. Tanya, the jealous waitress, was still upset. She didn't say anything in front of others, but she watched Emma closely. Her heart filled with anger every time customers praised Emma or asked about the next piano night. One evening, when Emma was in the back, Tanya walked up to Mr. Daniels. "Emma's been complaining about extra shifts," she said quietly. She said she's tired of waitressing and just wants to play piano. Mr. Daniels raised an eyebrow. "Did she say that directly to you?" "She asked me to tell you," Tanya lied. "Said she wants more time to practice and maybe doesn't want to wait tables anymore." Mr. Daniels said nothing at the moment, but the words stayed in his mind. A few days later, he called Emma into his office. "I've been hearing things. He said that you're not happy with your waitress duties anymore. Is that true?" Emma's eyes widened in shock. "No, sir," she said quickly. "I never said that. I love playing piano. But I'm thankful for this job. I never asked to stop being a waitress." Mr. Daniels nodded slowly. "Okay, I just wanted to hear it from you." Emma left the office confused and hurt. Why would someone say that about her? But deep down, she already knew who it was. Still, she didn't want to blame anyone without proof. That weekend, something strange happened. On Friday evening, her name was removed from the schedule. She was told there would be no piano performance that night, and she was given extra waitressing work instead. Emma said nothing, but her heart sank. She cleaned tables while guests looked around, asking, "Isn't Emma playing tonight? What happened to the music?" Some guests even left early. One man who had come just to hear her looked disappointed and walked out before ordering dessert. Mr. Daniels saw all this, and the next day he checked the staff communication board. That's when he saw a note in Tanya's handwriting saying Emma requested performance break. Now things made sense. He called Tanya into his office, and the truth finally came out. Tanya looked down, embarrassed. "I just thought she was getting too much attention," she said. "She used to be a waitress, not a star." Mr. Daniels sighed deeply. "You hurt her reputation and disappointed customers," he said. "This place isn't about who shines more. It's about honesty and teamwork." After that, Tanya was given a warning and taken off the main dining schedule for a week. She didn't speak to Emma again for some time. Meanwhile, the restaurant's inbox was filled with messages from customers asking why Emma didn't play. Some said they would not return unless the music came back. Others praised Emma's kindness and talent. One message read, "She's the only reason we dine here every Friday. Her music gives life to this place." Another said, "She doesn't just play. She heals. Please bring her back." Mr. Daniels called Emma and showed her the messages. Her eyes filled with tears. She hadn't known how many people cared. "I'm sorry for the misunderstanding," he told her. "I want you back at the piano next weekend this time. No one touches your schedule except me." Emma smiled, her heart warm with gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly. That night, she went home and wrote a new piece. It was soft, gentle, and full of emotion. She called it "The Letter Without a Voice," because it was her way of saying thank you to all the people who had supported her without even knowing her deeply. When she played it the next week, the restaurant was full again. The lights were dim, the air was quiet, and all eyes were on her. Her fingers moved slowly at first, each note carrying emotion like waves across a calm lake. Then the melody rose, stronger, fuller, like a person rising after being pushed down. People were moved. Some held their breath, some closed their eyes, and some reached out to hold the hand of the person next to them when the final note faded. The room stayed silent for a second before applause filled every corner. Emma stood up, bowed her head, and smiled, not because of the clapping, but because she knew she had stayed true to herself. She didn't fight back with anger or blame. She let her music speak, and her music had one. From that night on, no one ever doubted her again, not even Tanya and Emma. She just kept playing, one beautiful note at a time. It was just another Friday night at the restaurant. The tables were full, the lights were warm, and the soft sound of glasses clinking filled the air. But something felt different. Something exciting was about to happen. Emma sat at the piano, wearing a simple blue dress and her usual calm smile. Her fingers were ready on the keys. The guests were quiet, waiting. That's when a man walked in. He wore a black coat and had a serious look on his face. He sat at a corner table and ordered only a cup of coffee. No one knew him, not even the manager. He didn't speak much, but his eyes never left Emma. He listened closely as she played a new piece she had written the night before. It was a slow, emotional song filled with sadness, hope, and light. Then, man closed his eyes, just listening, and when she finished, he opened them and clapped slowly, not loudly like others, but with meaning. After the performance, Emma returned to clearing plates and checking on guests. The man stood and walked over to her. "You wrote that piece yourself?" he asked. Emma nodded shyly. "Yes, I did. I'm a music producer," he said, handing her a card. "I've worked with many artists, but what you just played, it's different. It's honest." Emma looked at the card, unsure what to say. "I'm not a professional," she said quietly. "I just, play. That's why it's beautiful," the man replied. "You don't play to impress. You play to feel." "I want to talk to you about recording some of your songs." Emma's heart started to race. Was this real? A music producer? Interested in her? He didn't push her. He simply said, "Think about it. Call me if you're ready." And then he left. Emma held the card in her hands for a long time that night. When she went home, she placed it on the table beside her keyboard and stared at it in silence. The next morning, she woke up early and began writing a new song. It was softer than her usual ones, but hopeful. She titled it "Maybe," because that was the word echoing in her heart. Maybe this was her chance. Maybe everything she had gone through led to this moment. At the restaurant, Mr. Daniels noticed something in her eyes. "Is everything okay?" he asked. Emma nodded. "Yes," she smiled. Something unexpected happened last night when she told him about the producer. His eyes widened. "Emma, this could be big for you," he said. "Don't be afraid to take the next step." "But what if I'm not ready?" she asked softly. "What if I fail?" He gave a kind smile. "You've already faced worse. You stood in front of people who laughed at you. You played through fear and silence. You've already won." That evening, Emma played again, but this time she added the new song "Maybe" at the end. The guests could feel something different in her music, something brighter, more alive. after the show. A little boy came up to her and said, "I want to play like you one day." She knelt down, smiled, and said, "You can, just don't stop trying." Later that week, Emma called the producer. Her voice shook a little, but she said, "I'm ready to talk." They met at a small studio across the city. It wasn't big or shiny, but it felt warm, real. The producer listened to her play, asked her questions, and helped her record one song. It was her first time wearing headphones and sitting in front of a microphone. Her hands trembled a little, but the moment her fingers touched the keys, the music flowed. After recording, he looked at her and said, "You're going to help people with your music. You already are." They agreed to record a full album slowly, one song at a time. Emma didn't want to rush. She still played at the restaurant once a week. She didn't want to leave it behind. "This is where I found myself again," she told Mr. Daniels. "I'll never forget that." Mr. Daniels placed a hand on her shoulder. "You'll always have a place here." He had a new sign placed near the piano. It read, "Emma's stage." More people began to visit the restaurant, not just to eat, but to hear her story. They asked for her songs, took pictures, and left flowers on the piano. Emma stayed humble, always kind, always smiling. She knew fame wasn't her goal. She only wanted to heal hearts, including her own. And with each note she played, she did. She turned pain into beauty, silence into sound, and doubt into hope. All because one night someone gave her a chance, and she had the courage to say yes. A few months had passed since Emma began recording her songs. Life had changed in ways she never imagined. People were talking about her music, not just in the restaurant, but outside too. Her soft piano pieces were being shared online, and more people wanted to know the story behind the girl who played from the heart. One morning, Emma received a message from a popular magazine. They wanted to write an article about her. The title was already chosen, "From Waitress to Star, the Piano Girl Who Stunned Everyone." Emma was surprised. She never thought her small performance in the corner of a restaurant would lead to something so big. She agreed to the interview, but told the writer, "Please don't make me sound like a celebrity. I'm just a girl who plays piano." When the article came out, it spread quickly. It told her story from the first day she was laughed at by guests to the moment the entire room stood up and clapped. It talked about her gentle spirit, her kindness, and how her music had brought peace to many people. People started visiting the restaurant just to sit near her piano. Some brought their children. Some came with tears in their eyes, hoping the music would heal something inside them. Emma still played every week, always in that same corner, on Emma's stage. She didn't let the attention change her. She still smiled kindly at guests, still helped clean tables, still listened to the stories people told her after the show. Her first album was finally ready. She named it Table for One, because it reminded her of all those nights she sat alone, wondering if anyone would ever hear her music. Now they had. At the album launch event, many familiar faces came. Mr. Daniels, the manager who gave her a chance, the cook who used to joke about the dusty piano, even some of the guests who once laughed at her but later became her biggest supporters. Emma stood on a small stage with a microphone in her hand. Her hands shook a little, but her voice was clear. "Thank you," she said. "Not just for listening to my music, but for believing in someone who was once invisible." She thanked her mother, who had always told her to follow her heart. She also thanked her late father, who used to clap the loudest at her childhood performances. She looked up for a moment, smiled softly, and whispered, "I hope you're proud, Dad." Then she did something no one expected. She thanked the people who once mocked her because of your laughter. "I found my courage," she said. "You gave me a reason to play louder." The room was quiet. Some people wiped away tears. Emma sat at the piano and began to play a song from the album. It was soft, full of emotion and so powerful that the whole room listened in silence. When she finished, the applause was long and warm. But Emma didn't smile for the applause. She smiled because she knew she was living her truth. The restaurant kept a photo of Emma near the entrance, and under it was written, "She didn't." Shout to be heard, she played. One evening, a girl about 10 years old walked up to Emma and asked, "Can I learn to play like you?" Emma smiled and said, "Of course, just play with your heart, not with your pride." Emma had started giving free lessons to kids from nearby schools. She used part of her music earnings to buy small keyboards for those who couldn't afford them. She never forgot where she came from, and she wanted to give others the chance she almost lost. Her apartment was still the same, simple and quiet, but now it was filled with light, music sheets, and letters from people she had touched through her songs. One letter read, "I was going through a very dark time. Your music reminded me that I'm not alone." Emma folded the letter carefully and placed it in a box with all the others. Whenever she felt tired or unsure, she would read them and find strength. She had turned her pain into something beautiful. She had taken silence and turned it into music. And all of it started in a restaurant with a dusty piano in the corner and a girl everyone ignored. Now, people didn't ignore her. They listened, they felt, they healed. Emma never chased fame. She didn't want to be a star. She just wanted to be heard. And in doing so, she helped others find their own voice. The girl who was once a joke had become the reason others believed in miracles. And every Friday night, she still sat at Persem. She still sat at Perusa. She still sat at Perusa Sem. She didn't want to be a star. She just wanted to be Haid. And in we see my live. We see my sipper. We see my society, did bide. They see my ed, my city way, I be I we ev. We is out and at by so wide to set out. We see so let it eyes I could I be to me soul sickos you said I to it is to my eye cause I tit quit it poo it kiss it they the speak cause it the sick to then to feel up with sit gone the head but set the curve since because is that we subject better that because of that same piano pressed the keys with quiet love and reminded the world that sometimes the softest sounds leave the loudest echoes.